Hey, third grade, we are going to start working with clay. I hope you are just as excited as I am because this is going to be a ton of fun. There are 4 rules or tricks when you are working with clay. And with these 4 rules, you can make absolutely anything you want. But before we learn about these rules and tricks, let me tell you a little bit about clay. Clay comes from the earth. In certain climates, if you dig under the dirt, you will find clay. It is kind of like Play-Doh, but a little less smelly. Clay that comes from the earth needs to be fired. That means it goes into a special oven that gets really, really hot and bakes the clay. But the type of clay we will be using is air dry clay, which means it doesn't need to be fired. So let's get started with the supplies we need for this project. Clay, wax paper, a small cup of water, a scratching tool, and a fork. You will also need a plastic bag and a paper plate, but you'll be getting those items at the end of class. You'll begin with what I call an ugly chunk. Our first job or trick is to transform that chunk into a ball. Make sure you squeeze the clay using the palm of your hand and not your fingers. We don't want our fingers to accidentally punch holes into our perfect spheres. A sphere is a fancy word for ball. Now we can make what is called a pinch pot, and you do this by pinching. First, you push your thumb into your sphere, but not all the way through. Then, using your fingers on the outside, pinch the clay to make the inside hole a little bit bigger. You are going to turn the clay and keep pinching. You want your clay to be the same thickness all the way around and up and down. So you're going to keep pinching until it's about the thickness of a cookie all throughout the entire pinch pot. Then you can put your pinch pot on the table and kind of smush it down a little bit so that we get a flat bottom, like that. And we can smooth out any edges on the top. Might use a little bit of water to smooth out those edges. Once your pinch pot looks something like this, you are ready to add the texture. And we want the texture to look like the cupcake liners that cupcakes come in. And to do that, we are going to use a plastic fork. You are going to gently scrape the fork from the bottom of the pinch pot to the top of the pinch pot. And you are going to do this all around the entire pinch pot, very gently. I am holding my clay very carefully. Now we're ready to move on. You can set the bottom part of your cupcake aside because the next trick is to make a slab. All you have to do to make a slab is to start with another sphere. You're going to lay it down on the piece of wax paper and start gently pressing. You're smushing it down. Sometimes it gets stuck to the wax paper, that's okay. We have the wax paper because it's easier to peel clay up from the wax paper than it is to pull it up from the table. If we tried to pull it up from the table, it would probably rip. And again, we want it to be the same thickness all the way around, but this time we want it to be a little bit thinner than a cookie, more like a thin pancake. And this is going to be the top of our cupcake, so we need to measure it against the top of our pinch pot. Anything extra that we might need to trim off, we can just use that tool. And then you can smooth out any parts that aren't pretty. Again, using a little bit of water on your finger will help to smooth out those edges. And then you can set that aside as well. Now we can't forget the frosting. It's the best part, right? To do that, we need trick number 3, coils. A coil is like a snake. All you do to make a coil is roll the clay back and forth in your hands or even on the table. Again, we want the same thickness throughout our whole coil. See, I'm getting a little thin here, so I'm actually going to pinch these two pieces together and try to make it. And then with that coil, I'm going to start building the frosting by twisting. And as I twist, I'm going to let it get wider and wider. And come down. It might be easier to just make sure you're watching what I'm doing closely, because it's easier to do than it is to explain, I promise. Now that I have my frosting, I need to add it to my slab. And to do that, I need trick number 4. Slip and score. 2 pieces of clay that are being joined together need to be slip and scored so that they don't fall apart while they're drying. All that means is to scratch the clay. We're going to use our scratching tool to scratch the clay where we want to add our frosting onto our slab. And we're going to do the same thing on the bottom of the frosting. That part is the scoring. Slip means to add water. So you're just going to dip your finger into the water and gently touch both of the areas that you just scored. You don't want to rub those areas because you will ruin all those scratches that you put on. You just want to dab. Not that dab, this dab. Now the two pieces are ready to be joined together. Push nice and good so you know that they're together really well and they aren't going to fall apart. Clay is forgiving, so you can always fix any areas that might have gotten smushed. And now you can decorate. You know everything there is to know about using clay, so let that imagination run wild and make some awesome cupcakes. Add sprinkles, add a cherry, add who knows, whatever you like on your cupcakes. I can't wait to see what you make. Have fun, get messy, be artists. We are going to be making clay cupcakes. The top of your cupcake will be removable so that you can use it to store all your little treasures.